13%, rise in the price of food, and even Halloween candy. Here's One America's Natasha Sweet.
Many Americans are saying they're significantly worse off today than they were only 1 year ago. A recent survey by Salary Finance found a whopping 72% of consumers now have less in their savings account. In fact, to make ends meet, some are either using those savings or going into debt. And for more on how to fight inflation, we turn to John Iammarino, president and founder of Securus Financial. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Natasha, for having me back.
So, we're seeing rising costs affecting the everyday lives of the American people. We see the cost of, Halloween candy up, as well as, those pumpkin flavored treats. And with the holidays around the corner, some are concerned, and we're also seeing food prices up 13%. So it seems as though almost everything costs more. And so before we get into the tactics of how to deal with the rising prices, do you see some companies and businesses using inflation as an excuse to price gouge?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put it by some companies to use this as an excuse to price gouge. I mean, people are people, and there are some people who are motivated by greed. However, for the most part, I think that companies are facing that before we had inflation, we had the pressure from the government for rising wages. Now we have the higher costs of goods and services, gas, energy, rents, leases, and we also have pressure on wages from a reduced job force. I think a lot of that is trickling down, and the inflation effect is trickling down to businesses across the board.
And I mean, even at the farmer's market, I noticed strawberries were $16 for a cart. I mean, eggs were up. And so I'm guessing it costs more to grow this food now with water and energy prices. I mean, it's insane, and it's definitely affecting everybody. And so now that same survey I mentioned earlier says 1 in 3 workers making more than $100,000 annually is actually in the red before payday. So what is your best piece of advice for people to deal with this current economy?
Well, I know I've said this in past interviews, and I sound like a broken record, but the reality is you can control only what you can control, and that is your spending. People with the rising costs of just basic living, you have to watch what you're spending, and you have to really be aware that you're not getting yourself into unnecessary debt.
First and foremost, Iammarino says it's vital to get rid of lingering credit card debt as rates continue to rise. And if you've been in good standing, there is a possibility you can request a better rate. Also, applying for a 0% credit card and paying it off that year can save you a tremendous amount in interest. For homeowners, Iammarino suggests applying for a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. While interest rates are on the rise, they're still lower than those predatory credit cards.
So we see that U.S. existing home sales have dropped for an 8th straight month coming in September. So we're seeing surging mortgage rates along with still elevated selling prices, preventing many from buying. The Federal Reserve has also indicated that there are more interest rate increases on the way. So does this mean consumers should refrain from purchases like a home for now?
Yeah, well, that's really going to be an individual choice based on a person's goals and financial situation. I will say this, that the higher the interest rates that go up, and we've been seeing this last year, the housing prices are coming down. You may have been able to buy a $1 million home at 3% interest rates last year. You may not be able to afford that $1 million home now at what the current interest rate of being over 7% for a 30-year fixed.
These very interest rates now, and with more on the way, could double one's monthly mortgage payment. So if it's an investment you're looking for, shopping around might be key.
The other thing I tell people is before you buy that home, ask people with similar homes the overall cost of owning and living in that home. What's the homeowners association? What's the property taxes, the insurance? What's your typical gas and electric and water bill? All of those, the prices have skyrocketed. So we want to make sure that you can afford your home, because the last thing you want to do is buy your dream home and then go default on it.
Yeah, those little things certainly add up. And the Internal Revenue Service announced Wednesday higher federal income tax brackets and standard deductions for next year can help some Americans see a boost in their paycheck. So can you walk us through how this works and what we'll need to know come tax season?
Yeah, I always like it when the government puts off a little bit of marketing on a problem that they created. It is the largest tax bracket increase we've seen in 4 years, but it is correlated to inflation. Now, in terms of those tax brackets, higher standard deductions are great. That means we're going to ultimately pay less in annual taxes. And for the average consumer, you're going to probably see some positive effect with the withholdings on your paychecks or your quarterly taxes that are due. So remember that we are paying higher taxes on the goods and services that are higher now because of inflation.
Makes sense. John Iammarino, president and founder of Securus Financial, thank you so much for your insight and talking to us on One America News.
My pleasure, Natasha.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce